argument you'll often hear in legislatures, state legislatures, not just with motorcycle helmets, but all kinds of things, bicycle lights. Most recently in Bend, about 2 years ago, the police announced they were going to start ticketing bicyclists who don't come to a full stop by putting their foot down at a stop sign or a red light. And that caused ripple effect across the bike commuting community, because if you can ride a bike fairly well, you don't need to put your foot down. You can actually come to a full stop, balancing your bike, look both ways, and then go. And the reason we do that is not just to be like, SOBs, but I can actually jump in front of traffic that way. Like if I'm at a red light, that light's red. So imagine the light at Wall and Greenwood, or Newport, I guess Wall and Newport. Very, very busy intersection. It's a slight uphill right there. I can sit there on my bike in the pedals for 10 minutes because it's a slight gyroscopic effect of going slightly back and forth, tiny back and forth. And the reason I like doing that is because as soon as that turns green, I take off. And I'm across the intersection before the cars basically even get started. I love that because if you notice, bike lanes taper down to non-existent in intersections, which means I'm out there basically on my own in the middle of an intersection. So when the police mentioned they were going to start ticketing more, I, for one, got a little upset. I'm like, that means I have to then lose my advantage, put my foot back in the pedal, clip in, and go, and now I'm with the cars. Right there, cars parked on the right-hand side. That's just one intersection in town where it happens. Now, fortunately, they haven't actually acted upon that, because imagine trying to implement that idea, right? It's impossible to implement. I mean, they can't get people texting while they're driving, let alone fit on the bikers. So you'll often see these safety issue things come up in the news, whether it's texting and driving, whether it's drinking and driving, whether it's riding a motorcycle with or without a helmet. And this is lovely sensationalism. Yes, it's a fatal decision. I love that. Fatal decision. From 1999 to 2009, the number of deaths from motorcycle accidents has grown in record numbers. That's what got my attention. Has grown in record numbers. What does that sound like? That sounds like statistical significance to me. Right? That's what it sounds like to me. Record numbers is another way of saying something unusual has happened. It's something worth noting. Otherwise, why would you read it in the papers, right? We'll see. We'll see. Now you gotta remember the context of this. They used to have to ride with helmets. Jeb Bush pulled it in 2009, I believe, right? Yeah, in 2009, he pulled the law and said you don't have to ride with a helmet anymore. And they noted in 2009, 402 motorcycle-related deaths occurred. Now I'm not saying that's a good thing. I don't want anybody dying on a motorcycle. But the question is, have the deaths grown in record numbers? That's the question. So what I'd like to do is analyze, as I affectionately call the Florida motorcycle, I don't think I demonstrated here. I like to call it the Florida motorcycle death rate. Okay? I want to check, what is the 2009 Florida motorcycle cycle, there we go, death rate, i.e., is the death rate higher in 2009 now that people don't have to wear their helmets anymore? You got to remember too, just because you haven't made it mandatory doesn't mean some of those people that died weren't wearing them. Does that make sense? Nowhere in the article does it say these 402 people were not wearing helmets. Some of them may have been wearing helmets and been in accidents so terrible they would have died with or without a helmet or a suit of armor. So we don't know that. All we know is they've given us a number of 402 deaths in 2009, 402 deaths in 2009 since they repealed the law, whatever it was. And all we've got is a 1999 statistic of 0.000745. That was the Florida motorbike death rate in 1999. So what we're doing is we're looking at 2009 and seeing if it's changed significantly since then. Cool? Make sense so far? Let's see if we can support the article. That's all I'm trying to do. Let's see if we can support the article. Here's our bell curve, friends. I'm going to move it over a little bit so I stop writing on that wall.
It doesn't actually say when he repealed it.
Say that again?
I don't think it actually says when he repealed it. So I don't know if that
it was back at 99-ish, somewhere back then, and then they let it ride out for the decade or so, and then they gave us the statistic from 2009, so that's all I can test is 2009, because that's all the numbers I've got. Now you can always get more numbers if you want, and I encourage you to look these up, they're very telling. I'll leave it at that. Okay, so here's the bell curve with 0 in the middle. what's going to go there? And it's 0 because we're standardizing it, but what percentage actually goes?
0.000745.
Is that, you guys buy that? We're trying to see if the new one is different than what it used to be before the repeal. Lauren, answer that question.
Is that our given percent, or do we have to move it over to?
Yeah, that's not.
Oh, I'm going to leave it as a decimal. I'm going to leave it just like that, 0.000745. I don't like the percentage notation because you can't do anything with it. You have to change it to a decimal first.
Are
So-
we checking if the death rate is different or if it was greater?
Let's see if their claim, which is implied in here, is supported, which would mean that it is greater. Doesn't the newspaper make it sound like it's higher now? Has grown in record numbers. Let's make it a greater
You
then.
just said different something. I was like, I thought it was.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, let's go with greater then because it says grown in record numbers. Good, Mark. And I would ask you that question on like a quiz or an assessment. I would say test to see that it's gone up. I didn't actually put a question here because we're talking about it in class. Go ahead, Lauren.
Never mind.
Are you sure?
Yes.
You positive?
I was confused that 0.7 of a person died, but like I just caught it.
It's all good. It's a rate, right? It's a rate, right? It's not an average number of people. It's an average percentage.
Right.
Go ahead, JC. I think that was your voice I heard.
Yeah, so don't we have to include a greater than in our definition?
We do, and we're going to get there. You guys are like 5 to 6 steps ahead of me. Bless you. That's awesome. That's what we're looking for right now. We're trying to see if that's the 1999 percentage. Where do we live now? I'm going to slap an arbitrary line right there, if it's okay. And it is somewhat arbitrary per Kate's discussion from before. That's 5%, yes? That's 5%. We're going to test at 95% confidence, back to Deanne's point. Although we can analyze momentarily whether or not we want to be right or wrong, false, positive, false, negative. We'll talk about that too. Good so far? Okay, good so far. Awesome. Now, let's start working through the template. What variable do we test? Actually, we've already started working through. I've answered the first two, haven't we?
Well, then it says single proportion.
Well,
It's
yes,
bold,
that's true.
right, for that.
Yeah, it's true. I guess I do give some of it away in the data, don't I? Sorry. I should take that out. That's a good point.
We're learning.
Okay, well, I know you. I know you are, but it doesn't go with the template anymore. I didn't think about that. Let me make a little note there. Remove headers. That's good. Well, it's good because in class we can discuss it. I mean, that's the idea. Is you don't have to have the label if you have the template in front of you. It's good. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. So we're testing P. We've defined the variable, the 2009 Florida motorcycle death rate, and how it compares to the 1999 pre-helmet repeal law. This did cause a great deal of controversy down in Florida, and it had nothing to do with W's presidential run, I assure you. Nothing at all to do with W's presidential run.
In the article, it doesn't say anything about rate because here it just says numbers.
No, that's intentional, my friend. Good. Did you hear what Deanne said? In the article, did it say anything about the rate of death, or was it just the 402? Nope. Didn't mention a thing. You're about to see why.
Make sure that the numbers are.
Oh yeah, I guarantee the number is greater. But let's see, the comma, what we also see. No, this happens all the time in media. They'll put a raw figure instead of a percentage because the raw figure itself appears to be growing in record numbers.
I just like to bring damage ought to be personal freedom.
Just test the numbers here. Just test the numbers, that's all. I don't want to get into a fist fight, verbal, mental, spiritual, or otherwise. Just testing the numbers, and I'm trying to support that grown in record numbers. Let's do some hypothesis. Oh, Harrison, go ahead.
Well, it seems like if the record number of like motorcycle accident death rates, motorcyclists on the road has to be increasing too.
That's what they don't mention.
Yeah.
See, this is like saying, you know, how often have you heard, oh, this record or this movie grossed more at the box office than any other movie in history? That's because the dollar is worth more than when Star Wars Episode 4 came out in 1977. But guess what? Once you adjust Star Wars Episode 4, 1977, it still made more money than anything that's come out, except for maybe a handful of movies since then. And once you adjust it for the population of the US in 1977 and adjust for that, all of a sudden, you can't just, you have to look at the entire package. You can't just compare the number, because the number is fraught with contingencies that are being, that's what we're doing right now, is adjusting at least one contingency. Thank you.
Well, they're looking at it like it's oranges and oranges versus
It's
oranges and
definitely,
tangerines.
exactly, or Portuguese and Spanish. Good, good. Let's get some hypotheses. We know we're testing little p. Little p is the 2009 Florida motorcycle death rate. What are we trying to show?
That greater.
We're trying to show that it's greater, yes?
Yeah.
We're trying to show that it's greater than it was in 1999, which was, that's the 0.00745. This figure you can find online. Granted, no margin of error. So I'm assuming
It's right.
it's right. I'm assuming they actually measured every single motorcyclist in the state of Florida, which they didn't. But I'm assuming they got most of them through registrations. Right? And you gotta remember too that, well, let's not get too much into the nitty-gritty of data collection. Let's assume it's right, because I can't prove otherwise. Okay? What's the opposite of that? Good! Now, this is, I personally like this, 00745. You will sometimes, very often I should say, more than sometimes, many times, they'll simply put an equal sign there. This is just convention that has been created over the past 10 years or 15 years or so. When I learned about hypothesis testing eons ago, it was always, if this is this, this is the mathematical opposite of it. But I'm just putting this out there. In articles, very often you'll always see an equal sign in the null.
It's just significantly equal?
I guess. I mean, mentally you have to realize that it's mathematically the opposite. But just be aware. I like to write it like this, and I think you guys do too, because it's easy to find the opposite of that. So just be aware that very often you'll see just an equal sign. It doesn't mean that your research does not equals. It just means that for whatever reason that convention has been adopted. Fair enough? Good? Okay. I'm going to leave it like that if it's okay with you guys. I like it like that. Personally, mathematically, it's more satisfying. Okay. Error analysis time. Error analysis time. Type 1. Give it to me in context. False positive.
We said the death rate increased, but it didn't.
We said the death rate increased when in fact it didn't. Which might even be the error the article is making. Yes, the article is claiming a large increase in death. But it might not be a large increase in death. So that's type 1 error. We are claiming an increase in a death rate when in fact there is no increase in death rate. Is that fair? That'd be a false positive. Yes?
Do we always put false positive for one false?
That's the definition of type 1 is a false positive.
Okay.
Now most inferential stat textbooks don't call it a false positive. I wish they would. Because it's what it is. It's you're saying that something is different or greater or less, but it actually isn't. Good. Good, very good, very good. What would the false negative be, the type 2?
We're saying the death rate's the same, but it's not.
Good! Saying that the death rate is not greater, but in fact, it is. That'd be missing it. Failing to cry wolf, if you will, if that makes sense. You can cry wolf, that's a type 1 error. That's whoa, there's no wolf. Then you can fail to cry wolf, that's a type 2 error, as the wolf disembowels you with its claws. That's claws, type 2, sorry. That's the wrong thing to be talking about 9:30 in the morning. Fair? Type 1, type 2. In your opinion, which one's worse? Type 2? Good, tell me why, Skylar, let me hear why.
Because then people won't wear helmets.
The implications of a type 2 might be worse. I like that, I wasn't thinking about that. So if you can go ahead and test this, yeah, the rate's just the same as it was before. It hasn't changed one bit. People might stop wearing their helmets based on that study. And if the rate actually is higher, and you can attribute it to the helmet not wearingness. Oof, that's terrible English. Good, I wasn't even thinking about that, good.
You're also sweeping all those deaths under a rug.
Well, you have to do that to some effect statistically.
Yeah.
And that's why I prefaced it by saying I'm not trying to make light of 402 dead people. But you have to, at some point, talk about an average in context without emotion.
Well, if you're saying that it didn't increase when it did, you're kind of just acting like.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry, I see what you're saying. I got you. Good. JC, you want to say something? Go ahead.
So I can argue the other side for type 1 error.
Go ahead.
In here it says, cited that causing brain damage ought to be a matter of personal freedom. So if they're claiming that there's an increase in the death rate, but there isn't, then somebody could believe, we all value our personal freedom, but in the sense that they don't want to wear the helmet, this could be saying, oh, hey, well, look, this is what's happening.
Maybe it's a mitigator. I like that. That's good. That's good. Just so you know, you can't be wrong with that number 5, the Y, and which type is worse. This is me asking you your opinion. So just realize there's not going to be a right or wrong answer. There's a correct answer for the p-value. There's a correct answer for test statistic. There's a correct answer for which hypotheses we're testing. But as far as which error is worse in your opinion, it's your opinion. I can't mark you wrong for, as long as you answer it, I can't mark you wrong on that. Is that fair? Good. Good. And sometimes you might say, I really don't care one way or the other. This doesn't affect me at all. That's okay too.
What if you can see both?
Or that's fine too. Give me your opinions. I mean, part of what is removed, for years and years, what was removed from inferential stat courses was this idea of individual analysis and thinking about it outside of the scope of mathematics. I'm trying to put that back in by asking little questions like this. So yeah, if you can see both, then go for it. So type 1, what's wrong with type 1 in your opinion? Or why is type 1 more valid or more important in your opinion, Dan?
Well, if you're a Bush,
Yes?
it's gonna be a huge difference, and that name, there's a lot of Bushes in office.
Interesting. A political, oh, that's good. A political, good, a political answer. That's good. I wasn't even thinking about that. Good for you. That's why I like reading these things and seeing the different results you guys have. Good. Thank you. Okay. I think it's time to start testing. What distribution are we going to use? For the remainder of the day, we're going to stick with the Z distribution. Yes, for sure, for sure. Test statistic and p-value. We run to our machines to do this. We run to our machines. I want to see where we land. I'm really curious.